The CIA, the White House, the most untouchable leaders in America, all humiliated by two teenagers sitting in their bedrooms. No fancy gadgets, no blockbuster hacking skills, just curiosity, boldness, and a single idea. What happens if we push the system too far? Screenshots leaked, reactions spiraled, chaos exploded, and suddenly the nation was watching every move of these audacious kids. This isn't fiction, this isn't a game, it's the shocking story of how two ordinary teens hacked the most powerful people in America and almost got away with it. And now, let's dive into the story of how two teens turned the most powerful system in America upside down. At first glance, this story doesn't look like the kind of case that should end up in headlines around the world. It doesn't begin in a secret government bunker. It doesn't begin inside a shadowy criminal syndicate. And it definitely doesn't begin with people who looked powerful. It begins with teenagers. Young, online, reckless, and completely consumed by the thrill of controlling something bigger than themselves. That's what makes this story so fascinating. Because when most people hear about cybercrime, they imagine genius adults in dark rooms, writing impossible code and breaking into impossible systems. But many of the most shocking digital breaches don't begin with supercomputers or sci-fi hacking. They begin with something much more human: curiosity, attention, boredom, ego. And in this case, those things mix together in exactly the wrong way. These were not men with polished reputations or elite careers. They were young people hiding behind usernames, talking big online, chasing reactions, and learning very quickly that on the internet, even small tricks could create very big consequences. At first, the power felt thrilling. A fake identity here, a manipulated phone call there, a stolen account, a private detail, a screenshot, a leak. Every success made them bolder, and eventually, what started as online mischief began to evolve into something much darker. Because once someone realizes they can fool ordinary people, a dangerous question starts to grow in their mind. What happens if we try this on someone important? And that is where this story stops being just another internet prank, because the people they started targeting were no longer random strangers. They were connected to power, government, intelligence, and national attention. And once that line was crossed, this was no longer just kids showing off online. Now it was a real case. And the most chilling part, they didn't need to overpower a secure vault. They just needed to find the weak point in a human being. To understand how this happened, you have to understand the internet they were growing up inside. This was an era where being anonymous online felt like having a second life. Usernames mattered more than real names. Reputation was built in chat rooms, forums, gaming spaces, leak culture, and underground communities where people competed for attention in ways that looked ridiculous from the outside, but meant everything on the inside. The internet wasn't just a tool anymore. And once somebody got recognition in those circles, even a little bit, they wanted more. That was the culture feeding this story. Not just hacking for money, not just hacking for ideology, but hacking for status, for the screenshot, for the reaction, for the chaos, for the feeling that you, sitting in your room, could make the real world move. That feeling is addictive. If a powerful person gets exposed, if private information gets leaked, if an institution looks foolish, the internet doesn't stop to ask whether the breach was deep or shallow. It reacts to the spectacle. And these kids understood spectacle very well. That's why this case became more than just a hacking story. It became a story about image, embarrassment, and the uncomfortable reality that a system can appear strong. Now here's the part that surprises a lot of people. Stories like this are often told as if the perpetrators were unstoppable technical geniuses. But the truth is usually more uncomfortable than that. Because many of the biggest cyber incidents don't happen because someone magically defeats impossible security. They happen because humans are easier to manipulate than machines. And in this case, manipulation was everything. These young hackers reportedly used deception, impersonation, and social engineering tactics to get around the protections that should have stopped them. Then they used those things to create pressure, confusion, or misplaced trust. And suddenly, someone on the other end of a phone call or support system makes one wrong decision. One. That's all it takes. One employee thinks they're helping. One support rep believes the caller. One person skips a verification step, one account gets reset, and after that, the whole thing can begin to unravel. This is why this story matters so much, because it wasn't just about what the hackers knew. It was about what their victims assumed. They assumed nobody this young could do something this bold. That last assumption may have been the most dangerous of all, because youth can make people underestimate intent. Adults often see teenagers as unserious, impulsive, immature, and yes, sometimes that's true. But sometimes that same immaturity combines with intelligence in a way that becomes reckless enough to be destructive. And by the time the world really noticed what these young people were doing, the story had already become much bigger than anyone expected. There's always a moment in stories like this where the line gets crossed. At first, it might feel like trolling, then it feels like pranking, then suddenly it's targeting real people with real power. This case was not interesting just because teenagers were causing trouble online. The story became explosive because the names involved started getting bigger. The victims became more important. That is when the internet stopped laughing and started paying attention. Because trolling random users is one thing, targeting high-profile figures tied to US national security and government power is something else entirely. Once powerful names entered the picture, this was no longer just internet theater. It was a direct challenge to authority. And whether the hackers fully understood that or not, they were now playing inside a world where the consequences were very different. This is where many young cyber offenders make the same mistake. They think the internet is still a game even after the game is clearly over. And once government attention locks onto a case, every joke suddenly becomes evidence. That's one of the darkest truths in this story. Why would teenagers do this? That's the question sitting under the entire story. Money can explain some cybercrime. Imagine being a teenager and realizing that a single phone call, a fake identity, or an account takeover could make people in positions of authority panic. To someone still forming their sense of self, that can feel intoxicating, and internet culture only amplifies it. Now, the hackers were no longer just trying to prove they were clever. They were trying to prove they were untouchable. A high-profile breach connected to top-level US figures transformed this from a niche cybercrime story into a national embarrassment story. Because now, this wasn't just about hidden internet communities impressing each other. Now, it had public impact. Political impact. There's another reason this story mattered so much. Embarrassment. If private contacts, messages, account details, or sensitive materials get exposed, the target doesn't only lose information, they lose control of the story. And once control is gone, the internet takes over. Screenshots circulate, names get repeated, narratives start forming. People guess, exaggerate, speculate, and amplify. And these young hackers seem to understand that instinctively. They understood spectacle. That is why stories like this spread far beyond cyber communities. Because even people who know nothing about hacking understand humiliation. They understand what it means when someone powerful is suddenly exposed in public. That emotional clarity is what gives the story its reach. It becomes less about code and more about control. Who has it? Who lost it? Who took it? And once that dynamic becomes public, the case becomes unforgettable. The moment media attention arrives, a cybercrime story changes. But the hackers become either evil masterminds or rebellious prodigies. The victims become either helpless fools or symbols of corrupt power. The facts get squeezed into the most dramatic version possible. The image of young hackers embarrassing powerful American figures was simply too dramatic to stay small. No matter how confident someone seems online, pressure changes everything, and eventually, pressure arrived. Investigations don't usually move like movies. They move quietly, patiently. They gather fragments, a handle here, an account there, a conversation, a timing pattern, a mistake, a link between identities. One clue alone may mean nothing, but enough clues over enough time start forming a shape. That is what makes digital investigations so fascinating. A fake name can hide you, but a pattern can betray you. A secure message can protect you, but one sloppy moment can expose you. A hidden persona can survive for months, but ego can ruin everything in minutes. Young offenders often don't realize that. They think getting away with something once means getting away with it forever. The same confidence that let them manipulate others began pushing them into riskier territory. And when someone keeps testing limits, eventually they make the kind of mistake investigators wait for. That doesn't mean the system is instant. It means the system is patient, and patience is brutal when the target thinks they still have time. This is one of the most haunting lessons in the whole story. The internet feels fast, but investigations are slow, and slow can be deadly. Because while the public is moving to the next headline, investigators may still be going over old traces, old accounts, old connections, old communications, looking for the one inconsistency that opens everything. And this story is not really about hacking alone, it's about ego. Digital ego is dangerous because it grows in unnatural conditions. It grows behind screens, protected by distance, encouraged by reactions, and inflated by communities that reward boldness more than wisdom. In the end, this is not just a story about two young hackers. It's a story about what happens when intelligence grows faster than wisdom, and confidence grows faster than consequences. It's a story about the internet giving young people a sense of power they may not be ready to handle. It's a story about institutions learning, too late, that security is not only technical, it is human. And most of all, it's a story about escalation, because almost no one starts at the biggest target. They start small, they succeed, they feel invincible, then they push further, then further. Then one day they realize the world is watching, and by then, it is already too late. What makes this story unforgettable isn't just the hacking, it's the contrast. Teenagers and national headlines, fake names and real consequences, online ego and real-world damage. It's a reminder that in the digital age, power doesn't always look powerful at first. Sometimes it looks like a kid behind a screen, testing a boundary, not realizing that one day the boundary will push back. If you enjoyed this deep dive, comment below. Do you think cases like this are more about hacking or more about human failure? And if you want more curiosity-driven documentaries like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Fero, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story.